All seriousness, despite any of the questions I have regarding the reason I stand before you today, there's two reasons that are clear. Reasons I'm 100% to be true. The first was I was called today, and the second, I answered the call. Although this may seem a bit simplistic to some of you, the subject of hearing and answering calls is in fact quite relevant to where you stand today as graduates. You see, the calls you choose to answer in the years to come will affect almost every detail of the picture you're painting of your life. A picture that will hang up on the walls of hearts of countless others far after you've finished your time here on this earth. Calls matter. So despite our tendency to overcomplicate the subject of call, by definition, it's simply this: a summons or cry for attention, and in some cases, our action. We perceive a call and we choose a response. The question is, where are you being called and will you respond? You see, one of the consequences of our culture's obsession with speed and efficiency is the abundance of sources from which calls now originate. Calls from phones and texts and emails that clamor for our attention, slowly diminishing our desire to engage in face-to-face interactions while lowering our tolerance for even a moment of peace and quiet. Calls from the many different forms of social media that beckon us to a place where gossip and complaining and even bragging have become almost the status quo, where our identity and self-worth has somehow become tied to the number of likes, followers, or shares we've gained as a result of our comments, our posts, or general popularity. And finally, calls from the mass media as we know it today. Television and movies and books and virtually millions of news and blog sources, all of which continuously entice us to indulge in content bent far more on entertainment and fantasy than on enrichment and fact. Subtly, we're lured into an almost mindless state of oblivion, where the line between truth and fallacy has become nothing more than an archaic concept held only by the naive, intolerant, and closed-minded. And see, although most wouldn't consider these calls to have any relevance in mankind's search for a call in life, in our culture today, these are the calls that most frequently summon us and most consistently fill our minds. And the truth is, what most fills our minds eventually fuels our hearts. So in light of the great challenge set before us today, the challenge to cut through the noise of the superficial and mostly trivial calls that ceaselessly cry out for our attention, I'd like to pose to you three simple questions. Questions that, of course, I'll share some of my own thoughts on, but more importantly, questions that I hope you'll ask yourselves. Not just today, but in the weeks and the months and the years to come as you seek to not only hear, but to answer the right calls in your life.